got a bidet!
Hey everybody, and welcome back for another video. In today's Shoot the Sheev podcast, we are talking about our least favorite Star Wars characters. So a couple weeks ago, we talked about our favorites. Now we're flipping the script, and we are talking about our least favorite characters from Star Wars. And this could be from just like the favorites. It could be any Star Wars characters from any medium that we've been exposed to. So, you know, there could be characters that I know from video games or something that I don't like that Sarah may not know because she doesn't play those games. So, really, it could be across any spectrum. But I will say probably the good handful we're going to talk about in this video are from the movies. So, I will start off with my least favorite this time, as I think we started with yours for the favorites last time. My least favorite character was inspired by something that Sarah said. She was name dropping a couple of characters, and it just reminded me of how much I really, really didn't like this character when it first came out, and I still don't, and I'll tell you why in a minute. And so my least favorite Star Wars character is Dio, and if you don't remember who that is, it's probably because they're forgettable. In Rise of Skywalker, Dio is the little droid that's kind of like on a wheel and has like a styrofoam cup for a head. And I honestly think the amount of inspiration that went into this was probably they were having lunch and they really needed a new droid and they picked up a donut in their coffee and made a droid. Just because there isn't any inspiration really behind this droid. We got BB-8 from episode 7, which in my opinion was a iconic new model type of droid. But Dio's model is nothing. And really, you get a little bit more of his character if you read the books. I did listen to the audio book for, what was that called? It was the backstory to when Luke and Lando were trying to find, I think his name is Ochi of Bestoon, and Dio was more in that book, I think, and prevalent than the movie because that was when he was actually working for Ochi and not, going around just telling people not to touch him. So I feel like, especially because the director, like the writer of episode 9, was the one that came up with, BB. I don't really think that he was worth it. I think he was a waste. And that's unfortunate because Dio, I feel like all the Star Wars toys that were on clearance after The Rise of Skywalker came out were Dio toys. There was a remote control toy of his that came out, and literally that's all I saw on the shelves that were still there. So
he was just so conveniently found with the exact information that they needed in like a sand pit, I think, or they found him in the ship after landing in the sound and they landed in the sand pit and then they found this ship, right? And he was in that ship and he just happened to have the exact thing that they needed to be able to find whatever they needed to find. It seems so coincidental.
yeah. Well, they kind of, I mean, to be fair, based on what Rian Johnson did to The Last Jedi, and they had to pick up as many pieces as they could and try to make a finale film, they kind of had to be spoon-fed the things for the plot, but yeah, I get it. It was just happened to be
To,
there.
to that point, what did the character add? Why not just find a flash drive
Oh, he
or
didn't add anything.
A Star Wars version of a flash drive, you know?
He didn't add anything. The only thing that he probably added was that J.J. Abrams got to play a character in Star Wars because he voices the droid, but that's about it. So Dio was my least favorite because I felt he was uninspired, really didn't do anything that we needed in the movie, and just was kind of annoying in the film.
He
Uh,
was very whiny, which is unusual for it'd be one thing if you were to have found a neglected child or something, you would expect them to have those types of characteristics, but this is a robot, you
well,
know?
to be fair, if you read the book, he was kind of a neglected droid because Ochi treated him like don't talk unless you're spoken to, shut up. You know, it was he was very down on the droid, I will say that. So that's why I bet he was so standoffish in the movie,
Right. What
but
I'm saying is it's weird to have a droid that has those types of traits.
has more feelings than probably a mechanical being should, so to speak.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So I would say, like I said, Dio is my least favorite. There's not a whole lot that we can really dive into for the character simply because we don't have much on the character. Like I said, if you read the book, uh, you get a little bit more information, but otherwise, um,
I mean, if they gave him some more parts or made him bigger so that he could have some attachments, like they purposefully made him so small that he was basically useless. Like, okay, BB-8 has a similar structure where he doesn't have arms and legs, but he has
does
like
have an
his
arm.
grappling hook and stuff. What?
BB does have an arm. It comes out.
But you know what I mean? Like he's got a grappling hook or a suction cup or whatever it is. He can pull things, he can get himself in different spots because of it and um like he served a purpose. He was able to function, whereas this thing it literally just rolls around and talks and that's it. It can't do anything. It's too tiny. Might as
Yeah,
well be a mouse droid.
that's kind of like why I was saying, coming off of Force Awakens and JJ, brought BB to the screen. Like I said, how uninspired was this guy? Especially, I would not put it past him that that's how that droid was made. I know they would never admit it, seeing a donut in a coffee cup, but that is what that droid was. And, kind of what you were saying with functionality, I don't think Dio did anything in the movies or in the movie where he was like able to, plug in and gather information. He wasn't able to hand something off like a data card or anything. He just kind of was there and was a minor annoyance to the characters because, they had much better things to worry about than Dio.
Some droid they just met and its feelings.
Yeah. And don't touch me. Don't touch me. It was like the Sheldon of Star Wars in a droid.
I could see that. Your description of his shape I thought was pretty funny. I hadn't heard that one before, but that is exactly what he looks like.
I kind of came up with it on the spot, honestly. Um, let's see if we can deep dive anything on Dio. Let's see. See if we can find anything that is interesting about him. If we go, so I went to Wikipedia and let's see.
He had a pretty boring paint job too. Like, okay, you could say that I guess about any of our droids, but for the droids that we'd had already that are like main characters, you've got C-3PO, he's gold. You've got R2-D2, so he's blue and white with little bits of other colors, for like his buttons and stuff or whatever. Then you got BB-8, who's orange and white. And so then what do we go to find something new and different? Well, let's do green and white.
Yeah, it's a pretty
Couldn't give him a cool
uninspiring
pattern
color.
or something? I'm gonna ignore what you just said. You take that back.
All right, so like the so this is what I found. That's probably the most interesting thing we can find on Dio is it says this is coming from Wikipedia, so give credit where credit is due. Dio is a droid who, at some time during or prior to 21 ABY, which was 21 years after the Battle of Yavin, was constructed, excuse me, constructed by a droid smith. However, Dio's creator perished at the hands of the Sith assassin Ochi of Bestoon. So Ochi murdered Dio's creator, and then Ochi of Bestoon took Dio for himself. And it says Dio was kept aboard Ochi's ship, which is also known as the Bestoon Legacy. During his time in service of Ochi, Dio guided an abundance of files and data on the Sith world of Exegol in the unknown regions and the mysterious Sith Eternal, the group that Ochi served. So it sounds like Dio was like Ochi's secretary with figuring
Yeah.
out different information on the Sith followers, Sith Eternal. He served, yeah, I would say he served the group. I was going to say he served the Emperor, but he, from what I remember from the book, he served the um the Sith Eternal, like the followers of Palpatine, and then eventually he found out who they answer to. Um, and all that good stuff. It was a good book. I recommend it, even though it was kind of long. Let's see anything else. The other thing it says on here is on a mission to Pisana, Ochi, while being tracked by Jedi Luke Skywalker and Lando Calrissian, became trapped in a quicksand and perished, leaving his ship abandoned in the desert with Dio deactivated aboard. So that's kind of like the ending of the book I'm referencing. As far as Dio's concerned,
Did you figure out the name of the book?
I was gonna look that up right now. I was wondering if it was gonna be in his little blurb, but I am not seeing it. Oh, Shadow of the Sith.
Mm.
The book is called Shadow of the Sith, and it's got Luke, Lando, and Ochi on the cover.
So as I was trying to look up the name of that book, and this is a totally side story, but I'm gonna say it 'cause it's real quick. I was trying to figure out the name of that book, and one of the ones that came up is How to Not Get Eaten by Ewoks and Other Galactic Survival Skills. I think we've seen that book in the store before, but that's still really funny to me.
Yeah, which we will be having a video coming out in the future where we got some books that are kind of in that realm. We've got a good Ollie's find, and we've done Ollie talks here on the channel, so look forward to that. Well, that was my least favorite character, being Dio, and we will be talking about some more characters that are our least favorites coming up, so stay tuned. Have you ever wondered what Amazon coffins are and what they're full of? Well, we got you covered here on the channel. Check out our playlist of our Amazon coffin unboxings, where Sarah and I open up boxes that have Amazon returns, and we share with all of you what we get in each of those boxes. If you ever wanted to get into liquidation and want to know what types of things you can find, check us out. Now back to our show. We are back here for our next character we're going to be talking about as our least favorite. So I already talked about mine being Dio, so now we are moving on to Sarah. So Sarah, who across the Star Wars galaxy is your least favorite Star Wars character?
I think this is an incredibly hard question to pick just one. So I went with a less obvious one, and you're probably going to be surprised, I think, but I'm going to go with Maz. She is somebody who looks really cool. You know, she's got those big glasses and interesting skin texture and shape, like just because she's kind of like a shorter creature, if you will. I was gonna say person, but she's not human. I guess you could call her humanoid.
Yep.
But she's somebody who, Han goes to for help, right? And she's she's just not overly helpful. She's somebody who, she might have given some advice at that time, and she kind of helps with Ray down in the basement alley with a lightsaber, trying to explain what's going on. So she's undervalued, I think, is the main thing that I'm trying to get across. Those are her only main highlights, whereas everything else, I think, is just a waste. We have this one scene, and I apologize, I don't know which movie this is, but somebody's trying to call her, and you can see in the video chat or the hologram chat or whatever you want to call it,
The Last Jedi.
that she is in the middle of a blaster fire battle. And like it is crazy. It looks like it's nuts. I want to see that battle. I feel like that would have been something really cool to see. And maybe it didn't exactly tie to the main plot of the story of the movie, and so that's why we didn't see it. But then Maz needs to be more in the main plot of the movie because she is somebody who could be so cool, and yet we barely see her. Um, I feel like they could have done way more with her. And by having that, especially that video chat piece in there, I almost feel like that's a teaser of here's some stuff that you want to see, but we're not going to show you. Because otherwise, what was the point of the phone call? You don't have somebody call somebody just for them to say, sorry, I can't help.
She did give him information.
But she wasn't able to really go and be a part of things, which is what I think they really wanted.
So it's kind of a character that was a wasted opportunity, so to speak.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to portray, if you will. I think they could have done way more with her. I think she could have been a much bigger piece, and a lot more helpful than what she was. Because she might have been helpful with a couple little things, but I think that there's a lot more that I think there's a lot more she could have done. I don't know how many different ways to say that, but
I
um,
think, especially since she was new for the Force Awakens, again, helmed by J.J. Abrams. I'm surprised that she didn't have. I don't think she's even in the ninth movie. I guess I could be wrong. Maybe she's like in the background or something, but she doesn't have anything that she adds to the story. I feel like there was a major cliffhanger as far as like what she's talking about in The Force Awakens when she hands the lightsaber. And they say like, "What's this?" And she said, "Or how'd you get this?" or something along those lines. And she says, "That's a story for another time." So we never actually heard in the films how Maz came to get the lightsaber. There might be the story in the books. I have not read a book that talks about that yet, but
that would have been a really cool scene to watch too, even just as some sort of a flashback of, even if you did it like the passing of the baton, right? The passing of the lightsaber, and then it triggers a flashback to some sort of battle sequence or something, or, there's just so many other spots where, and granted, the movies were long as they were. Like, it's not like they were short films that needed more content, but I think this is one spot where we could have spared some more content.
I think unfortunately the big thing here with Maz is that it goes back to the fact that Disney had no plan for Star Wars. They bought Star Wars. They wanted to crank out things as fast as possible to get their money back from their purchase. And when they made The Force Awakens, they had the intention of having J.J. Abrams set it up, which he did. And apparently he is really well known for having like mystery box type plot lines where he'll set something in stone and then we hope to get some answers later on. Maybe we do, maybe we don't. I mean, you can kind of attest to that with the show Lost because he was responsible for that. We haven't finished the series yet, but I mean, it kind of seems like from what I have seen that show was kind of like a dangling carrot all the way through, and hopefully there's a decent payoff in the end. Hopefully more decent than the Rise of Skywalker. Um,
E-
but oh man, that's terrible. Um, but yeah, he was supposed to set it up, which he did. He brought a bunch of new characters, one of them being Maz, which honestly, after seeing The Force Awakens, I thought that she could have been a really good character. I thought, she had a pretty decent backstory. She was interesting. But then when
I feel
Ryan
like
Johnson,
I feel like she could have been just as involved as Poe.
yeah, probably. Um, but when Ryan Johnson came into play, and then, like you said, only used her in a couple seconds because she was in some sort of blaster firefight, and then we never hear from her again. And for what? A casino scene where they're trying to inject animal rights. Okay. Um,
That was such a terrible scene. I don't want to get too far off the deep end here because I know we'll have more movie reviews to come out later for
oh
the
yeah, we still got The
rest
Last
of the
Jedi
films,
coming up.
but
Uh,
so
you kind
sticking
of
strictly to the characters here,
Yeah, well, I'm just saying, like, they could have done more, but they chose not to, so we're just kind of left with this stinky pile on our doorstep. So it is what it is.
Yeah, but I mean, like I said, it's really hard to pick a least favorite, like to pick just one, because there are so many characters, just like it's hard to pick your favorite. There's so many that could be your least favorite because well, for one, there's a lot of characters in general, so it's not like you're guaranteed to love everybody, but there's a lot of other characters that have had some decent sized missteps too. Um, but I went with Maz because, she's somebody who had just such wasted potential, and I really wish I could have seen more from her. I think that she could have played a much bigger role, and it would have been neat to see somebody who's not a human play such a big role because you've got, you know, for all of these resistance battles and whatnot, your main characters are what? Finn and Poe. There's Leia and Han. There is Chewie, so I guess there's one non-human character, but all the other and Rey, of course, but like all the other main characters that we're meeting, the majority of them are humans. There's not a whole lot of Star Wars creatures in the films where Maz was. So I feel like she could have been a really good opportunity to have somebody non-human have a bigger role.
So I'm trying to look up to see if Maz was in. Okay, Maz was in The Rise of Skywalker. She must have just been kind of in the background because she's credited for IMDb.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, sometimes you just don't realize the certain characters that you dislike until you see reminders or hear things. So kind of like how you brought up Dio, and that clicked for me. You know, just trying to look up Maz, I can see some other characters in the sequel trilogy that I really didn't care for. Um, but we'll be getting to that towards the end of our video when we have some honorable mentions. But that was Sarah's least favorite Star Wars character, at least that the both of us can think of at the moment. Mine being Dio, hers being Maz, coincidentally, both from the sequel trilogy. But we have a fun little segment for our third section here, so we're going to take a quick break, and then we are going to get back to you, hopefully with some fun information. So stay tuned. Have you seen The Mandalorian? Do you wonder what Operation Cinder was that they mentioned in the show? Well, we got you covered because we have an entire playlist dedicated to the Star Wars Battlefront 2 campaign, which highlights Operation Cinder. So if you check out our playlist, you'll be able to see what actually happened with Operation Cinder and know what they're talking about with the show. Now back to ours. All right, welcome back, everybody. I, as promised, mentioned that I did something a little bit fun here for um, this third segment of the Shoot the Sheev podcast for this week. And that is, we didn't, well, when we did the favorites, we had a third person here. We had my sister. Um, but as you can see, or as you've probably been listening, if you listen to these podcasts, we don't have a third person on screen today. So what I decided to do was I put, Sarah and myself decided to ask on social media who our friends and family thought were the worst Star Wars characters. I kind of identified that as least. It was trying to get rid of the ambiguity of what we really wanted to hear. So I thought it'd be fun to go through and just say some of the responses. Not going to say any names, of course, because don't really want to be sharing that information on Facebook or on our podcast from Facebook. But let's see. The first one was the one that I had anticipated to be on this list, and the first character that was listed was Jar Jar Binks. And there's a handful of people that agreed with this as well. I would say I don't hate Jar Jar. I wouldn't say he's my least favorite, but I can definitely see where people are coming from when they say Jar Jar. Some of the descriptive words that people used was annoying. At one point, he's a horrible stereotype. I think those were the only two for Jar Jar.
Yeah.
Yeah. So not only was his character just blatantly annoying to people, but some people, just the way he was being portrayed seemed to insinuate some things in real life, and people really didn't like that. So you just kind of take it for what you want. I personally did not see Jar Jar as I'm trying to define this character as a race or a group of people in the real world, and I'm making fun of you. I didn't see it that way. I just saw it as George trying to make a different species that is going to be obviously relevant in his other movies. So he was really trying to, I don't know, make him silly and relatable, but I don't
If
think
it
he
was a,
meant
s-
I don't
if
think he meant to the degree of a stereotype.
Yeah, sorry to keep interrupting there. If it was a stereotype, I think that that entire species, meaning all the Gungans, would have been that same way.
Yeah, like you should be saying
Not
it
like
like a
as like
Gungan.
simple-minded and maybe clumsy and whatnot, because that's kind of what Jar Jar is.
Yeah,
But Jar Jar is really kind of the only one of that group that overly portrays that. Everybody else, they're all military fighters, and they have guards, and they don't share those same characteristics as Jar Jar. So that's why I don't really see him as being a stereotype, since he's so different from even the rest of his own species. I mean, in
right.
terms of him being annoying, I kind of think he's fun. It's kind of one of those where it's stupid funny, and that's not everybody's style, but I like it. So,
Yeah, one part or like one way that I kind of interacted with the character, um, where I was really trying to decide whether I thought he was funny or not was in Disney Infinity. He was pretty active in the prequel story mode. So, um, I got to hear him rattling off lines for hours on end. So it didn't bother me too much. Moving along, the next one that I have on the list was Rose. So Rose is the character from The Last Jedi, that kind of followed Finn quite a bit. And the reasoning for Rose was that she was so preachy. Plus, she tried to explain how bad the First Order was to a slave of the First Order. So, um, kind of seemed redundant the way that she was talking to Finn about how bad the First Order is when clearly he'd been living through it. Um, but also, from the same response, was Holdo from the same movie. Holdo was pretty close to the one that I was going to choose. I remember watching The Last Jedi, and Holdo was definitely the one where I felt like they had a great actress playing the character. Like it wasn't a misstep by the actress by any means, but
And this
just
was just for those who might not remember who Holdo is. It's the purple-haired lady that was kind of like Leia's assistant, if you will, or she was in charge when Leia was unconscious.
yeah. So just the she's supposed to be legendary. She's supposed to have these great ideas, and supposedly she, did like a 1 in a million shot with doing hyperspace or hyperspeed, light speed, whatever, through a star destroyer. Like, if that was such a great thing, why didn't we try to do that and do it remotely? So you didn't have to kill yourself. Um, but I just thought her character was I think her character was more annoying than Jar Jar because she just seemed empowered for no reason. Seemed like she didn't really care about what other people thought, especially Poe. Um, and then she just does random things that happen to work out in the best ways. But I didn't think it was super earned. She didn't show a reason of why she was that smart, so to speak.
She kind of treated Poe like a child. Like, you're gonna sit down, shut up, and listen. I'm in charge, like it or not. Deal with it. I'm not gonna tell you why I'm doing what I'm doing. You just have to listen.
Yeah.
It wasn't it's not a very inspiring style of leadership.
Yeah, I think that's, like I said, kind of what I was saying was it wasn't earned. So we were just supposed to, like, us as an audience were pretty much told to sit down, shut up, and listen. Like, just accept that this character is the way that she is. But like I said, it really didn't feel like she earned uh, the respect of how she was supposed to be portrayed. This next one on our responses I thought was interesting. It was Darth Maul, especially because Darth Maul is one of my favorites. So I didn't understand when I first saw the name, but when I read the reason, I could see it. The reason was that the red face still gives me nightmares. So, part of me wonders if Darth Maul was mixed up with the Insidious movie because their villain looks a lot like Darth Maul. But I will say, he does kind of look like the devil. He does look menacing and terrifying. So,
Got
I could,
those
I could,
glowing yellow eyes too.
yeah, those Sith eyes, so cool.
So
Um,
creepy.
we had some other ones here. The next one was from a couple of people that felt this way, and it was Anakin, which kind of shocked me. Uh, Simply because the people that responded this way felt that he reminded them of a whiny kid who never gets his way. And let's see, childish behavior made the responder cringe. So, uh, I guess Anakin's outbursts really didn't settle well with some people. Next one we got is Watto, the junk dealer, because he was mean. He was kind of mean. Honestly, he owned slaves, so that's definitely up there in the mean scale. Uh, I kind of liked Watto, not because he was a slave owner, but he was just an interesting new character when episode one came out. Um, they didn't really say if he had some sort of remorse for having slaves, or maybe he was just broke. But I think by episode two, he didn't have any slaves because he had to sell them. So I don't know what went on with his character. One cool thing is that I read that he was a war veteran. That's kind of neat. The last one that I had on social media was a little bit different. Um, the response was more or less just disliking a scene or a depiction, so to speak. And I'll just read what it says. So, not so much the worst character, but scene. So, referring to a scene, not a character specific. But the person didn't like the telepathic scene between Rey and Kylo. which I did think was kind of weird, what they were doing there, but I think JJ brought that pretty good full circle. But the responder felt that they gave Kylo feelings that didn't really stick to the Star Wars dark side mannerisms, but they really liked the lightsaber. So I didn't like the connection between Rey and Kylo when they can like see each other across the universe. Um,
Seeing Kylo shirtless was a weird dark side mannerism. I'm not used to seeing that.
that was definitely one of the weirdest. If I was gonna pick a cringiest moment of Star Wars, I think that would be up there, which is interesting because like in Jurassic Park, I think that Ian Malcolm's pose is amazing. I think Jeff Goldblum just knocked it out of the water with that one. Or knocked it out of the park, not out of the water. That's different. Um, but just seeing Kylo randomly with his shirt off was kind of like, is that needed? Is that necessary? I feel like we saw Anakin shirtless once, but I can't really think of a whole lot of characters where they actually were shirtless in Star Wars. We saw Luke shirtless when he was in the back to tank. Probably same thing with Obi-Wan.
Those were so much more subtle, though, to be in a back to tank where you're having to be healed and stuff, and you're like in a medical place and not just getting out of the shower.
Yeah. Which didn't look like he was coming out of the shower either, though, because his hair wasn't wet.
Or just going into the shower, maybe,
He was
like
just
either way.
chilling with his shirt off, the typical Saturday night.
That's totally what a Sith Lord does.
Yeah. Did you want to go through the ones we got from text messages?
Sure. Um, so this person, it's their first, let me just start with their first one. They said purple hair Laura Dern, which was Holdo, right? We've kind of already talked about her.
Yep.
But they said basically just serves as a plot device to obstruct Poe rather than just acting like a real person. And they hate that she just drives through the ship. Just, so kind of similar to the points that we've already discussed there.
Her only purpose was to commit suicide.
Yep. Which, I mean, sometimes in war people do that, but uh it didn't seem realistic for her to not consult with anybody else about doing this. She kind of just took it upon herself to go to the worst extreme possible without thinking with a team of what other possibilities there are to get past this. And she waited until there really was no time to discuss it. So she kind of took matters into her own hands. So this next response was Carrie Russell in Rise of Skywalker, and that is
Dory.
Zori, right? So they feel like she's just there to prevent people from thinking that Poe and Finn are in a relationship, which really bothered this person. Zori was kind of like a tiny little love interest for Poe. She did wind up giving him some landing privilege puck, if you will, to be able to fly his ship somewhere that he needed to go. And she pointed, I think she was the one who pointed them to go to Babu Freak, right?
I think they met Babu on that planet. So she like helped guide them to him, so to speak.
Right.
I
So
would say this was a very cringy moment too, was there the
yeah,
love interest between her and Poe. It just did not seem to work.
it seemed very one-sided, and we didn't really have a reason to understand why she was so standoffish about it. And, they tried to do the whole jokes about being a spice runner and whatnot, but it didn't really land. I didn't really know the characters well enough to be able to have that kind of chemistry between them, I think.
Yeah, it's kind of like they were trying to hold the Star Wars humor that Star Wars is known for in the films, but it didn't quite land because they weren't like the characters didn't seem like they had a purpose to be there very much, if that makes sense. I feel like if we would have had a little bit more background on Zori or had a little different interaction between Poe and Zori, it would be a little bit more earned. Um, I mean, basically, he's very flirtatious with her, but she just keeps pushing him off. I mean, that's kind of comedic in itself, but at the same time, I don't think it really worked.
Yeah, it just seemed very misplaced. This next response was for Rose, for basically the same reasons we've already talked about, just not really serving a purpose and kind of being a waste of space. This next one is interesting to me. It's not somebody that I really thought of. Was Newt Gunray, and that he is the stereotypical Chinese accent that was embarrassing, and that he just wasn't very smart. And the situation that they are recalling to, and Jeremy, I'll need your help with this because I don't necessarily remember this, was that they thought some slow gas would kill the Jedi Knights.
Yeah, because in the Phantom Menace, when Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan show up and they're in the little like conference room, they release gas to try to kill the Jedi, but they hold their breath for all of 30 seconds and then get out of there. So I will
Uh,
say, uh, as far as stereotype stuff, because we talked about Jar Jar, being one of those that people really felt was being reflective of people in the real world. I would say Newt Gunray was way closer to um, being almost stereotypical because of uh, just the way his voice was, the inflections. Like it didn't seem like he had a alien voice, so to speak. It just seemed like a normal person's voice, which follows along the lines of the stereotype in a way. Um, but yeah, I guess I could see that.
yeah. This next one was for the CGI singers in Jabba's palace, especially the furry brown one whose tonsils we see. Those were some interesting singers in Jabba's palace. It was pretty weird. And that guy, he wasn't in the original, was he? They added those in later?
Yeah, I think he was added later on in the special editions, which we will be doing a Shoot the Sheev on the edits coming up in the future. So we will be talking about him a little bit more later on too.
Yeah, he was definitely a weird looking guy, and I'm not sure what the purpose was of seeing his tonsils.
Yeah, they tried to do like a mini little concert type deal in Jabba's palace, and he was a weird one in that process. So
This next one is almost the one that I chose to do my discussion piece on, which was the sassy lady robot in Solo.
same
Uh,
here.
can you, while I'm kind of describing her, maybe pull up her name because I don't remember.
Yeah, I can pull her up.
So in Solo, she was, what was it? Was she Lando's robot?
Yeah, she was the social justice droid.
Yeah, but she was with Lando, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So when we find Lando, he's kind of like in some sort of underground, think of like chicken fighting, but it's not chickens. It was with droids, I believe, right?
Yeah, it's L337.
L337. So, she's trying to get these droids to think for themselves and to not fight because you don't have to be part of these underground fights and whatnot, and just wants the social justice for the droid um species, if you will. I'm not sure you can even really call it that, but that's kind of what it is. Uh, it just seems so misplaced and just another forced agenda to show, that bad things are bad, like chicken fighting's bad, or however you want to describe it. Which I mean, we even had a very similar situation recently with Tale of the Dragon, where they were doing the same thing but with children fighting, like where these
House of the
children were,
Dragon.
yeah, thank you. Where they were bringing up children to fight, and that seemed a lot more uh or a lot less in your face and a lot more purposeful, and like that actually was a thing that was meant for that time, whereas this was just so random. And to have it be about droids where, they're droids, they don't have hearts, they don't have real feelings. Some of them, I guess, do kind of have feelings, but you know what I mean? Like, it's not the same as a living creature.
She would be very disappointed in BattleBots. But to kind of talk about that a little bit, I don't think there's much of a problem with the idea that they're having droid fights, so to speak. I think what the problem really is, and I'll even reference House of the Dragon kind of like for context of what you were talking about. I think the problem with Star Wars trying to inject politicalness like this into Star Wars, the problem is that they're trying to put it in your face. They're trying to I don't want to use the word that I'm thinking of. They are trying to be very blunt, and they are trying to make sure that you do not miss what they're trying to tell you. And I think the problem with that is that it comes off as very annoying and very out of place. Whereas, like with House of the Dragon, they showed the issue, and they didn't sit there just being like, "Oh man, children fighting are bad. We can't have children fighting. Fighting is bad, especially when they're so young." Like it's not in your face of what they're trying to say. You see it, and you can see that it's wrong, and you can infer what's going on, so to speak. Like just by the way that the characters are responding to this, like the way that they look at what's happening, not just, blatantly trying to tell the camera of, you see this? This is bad. Don't do it. I think that's what's wrong with how Disney is trying to do these things with their Star Wars platform, and they need to make it more Star Wars-ish, if that makes sense. Because I feel like when George Lucas was trying to do these things, it wasn't in your face. It was, you're seeing this, it's wrong, don't do it. Whereas Disney has a much different approach. That's kind of my perspective on it. It's not wrong to have it in there, but the way that they're trying to tell us is really taking away from what Star Wars should feel like. And I think that's the problem.
I think the big part of that too is this character. Like it's how it's portrayed, but it's mainly this character. She's the one who's trying to spell it all out.
Yeah,
Just is over the top about it.
she's literally only in the film pretty much to point out bad things to everybody. That's literally her job.
Yep.
So, and I think she was saying that her and Lando had some sort of weird relationship. Yeah, that was interesting.
I forgot about that. That
Yeah,
was pretty cringy too, that she kept thinking Lando was coming on to her.
yeah. So
Yeah.
we went ahead and we did, like I said, we asked family and friends of what they thought was the worst or least favorite Star Wars character across any mediums that they have been experiencing with. So that was what we were reflecting on here and, talking about with all of you. So after we take a short break, we will be doing some honorable mentions. So stay tuned for that. Have you ever wondered what it's like to grow up during the prequel era? Do you wonder what type of merchandise was around then? How different was it than it is now? Check out our videos on this channel where we talk about the merchandise of the Phantom Menace and the merchandise of Attack of the Clones. They are here on this channel. The Phantom Menace is my first video ever on YouTube, so there's a special place in my heart for that one. So please, if any, check that out. Now back to our show. Welcome back, everybody, for the final segment here for this week's Shoot the Sheev. We are talking about some honorable mentions of who our least favorite Star Wars characters were. Maybe we can just kind of go back and forth, listing some different ones. Like I'll pick one, you pick one, so on and so forth. One that I will probably lead off with is Snoke. That is a character that's probably surprising, is a dark side character, and we enjoy seeing all the different cool bad guys. But at the same time, Snoke was a puppet that just really didn't make sense. Snoke was supposed to be, like this powerful dude. In my opinion, was probably supposed to be the sequel trilogy's version of the Emperor, not just a clone that's puppeted by the Emperor, as it turned out to be. But just small things that just made him really stupid. One being, he died because he couldn't hear a metal lightsaber clinging right next to him, and then eventually it cut him in half.
I'm also going to point out with that, who points that at themselves? You don't set a gun down pointing at yourself. Why would you put a lightsaber down pointing at yourself?
He didn't point it at himself. Kylo turned it, and so that's why it doesn't make sense he didn't hear it.
Yeah.
Especially being right next to him. Was he? I guess the excuse would be that he is so blinded by his power that he couldn't hear the right next to him. Just
You'd think he'd like feel it or something with the force, but yeah. I know that's the excuse that they gave, but I don't buy it.
yeah. So a huge wasted opportunity, a slap to the face to Star Wars fans by Rian Johnson, and our first honorable mention is Snoke.
And who could forget Pickled Snoke?
Yeah, Pickled Snoke. That's a good character. I would put Pickled Snoke above Snoke. All right, what's one that you got?
I am going to go with Leia. And I don't mean this as her entire character. I more so mean the tail end of her arc. And this is not bad on Carrie Fisher by any means. This is completely about the actual character and not the actress.
We love Carrie Fisher, honestly. She's great.
Yeah, she's awesome. But the way that they ended her character storyline, the love seemed so strained between her and Han, like a marriage that's about to get divorced. Like it seemed bad. And I don't know really why they had it that way.
I think they were separated.
That's kind of what it seemed like, but I don't know. It's such a gray area. And then her leadership style, it just she doesn't have that inspiring bone in her body to me. It doesn't, like when I think of the speeches that Padme did when she was queen or senator, she was strong with what she was saying, and you wanted to do what she said. And with Leia, and maybe it's kind of a bit of Holdo being next to her, but I didn't feel it. And let's not forget the Mary Poppins scene when she's out in space and she sticks her arm up like Mary Poppins grabbing her umbrella or flying with her umbrella. She sticks her arm up and she's able to bring herself back to the ship. Mind you, she's in outer space, so she can't breathe. And then she's unconscious for a period of time, and then basically it's her end shortly thereafter. It just seemed so weird and unusual and not the way that I would want a legacy character like that to be handled. I think it was poorly done.
Gotcha. One other honorable mention that I have, because pretty much what you said about Leia is what I would say is the mishandling, and that was just one of the many what just happened moments from The Last Jedi. My next one is another sequel trilogy character, which is unfortunate because we're saying all sequel trilogy information. But I would say General Hux. He seemed to be a character that could be, in my opinion, pretty strong after The Force Awakens. I know some people didn't take him seriously when he was giving his speech during the movie, but I thought it was pretty good. Um, when he was saying that, this is going to be the last day of the Republic, and then they destroy the Republic with um, Starkiller Base. So I thought he had some pretty good potential. And then his character was kind of turned into the joke of the series. Um, there were some scenes I feel like in Rise of Skywalker where uh he the character just seemed out of place. He seemed almost as if the actor couldn't believe what lines he was saying. I
He was the one that said, "I'm the spy," right?
Yeah, that's actually the scene I'm thinking about, honestly, is when he's like, I'm the spy. It's like, we got that. It's one of those things, it's just that movie had some very cringy lines, especially they fly now. So that was another one of them. Again, Disney does not have to put it in your face. Everybody knew when that happened. In I feel like that could have almost been cut out, but they had to have some sort of weird comedic scene where Poe was like, I knew it. And he's like, no, you didn't. That whole thing. There's this weird comedy that was being forced into that movie. And General Hux really, I feel he should have been a little more of a hardened person, whereas he kind of started that way and then really tailed off um, towards the end of the sequel trilogy. He's got some interesting stuff in the books. I remember I read the Phasma book. I think it's literally called Phasma, and it talks about the backstory of Captain Phasma. And he's involved quite a bit because his dad is talked about quite a bit, and kind of how he went through the First Order ranks, and eventually, once his dad passed, how he took his father's place. So I feel like he was done more justice in the books, which happens to be, with any movie book comparison, probably. But, you know, it was a wasted opportunity to have a strong First Order character as opposed to he starts strong, he became weak. We got someone to replace him because we knew he was a joke already and brought in General Pride, and then that really wasn't it. So I would say General Hux is, at least the way he was handled, would be one of my least favorites.
I'm gonna go to not a different movie, but a different TV show, and I'm gonna go with Reva
I was
from.
wondering if we were going to bring up Reva. Part of me was like, I can't do it. I can't do it. But yeah.
I'll do it. I'll take that shot. Reva from Kenobi.
And
All right.
again, character, not actress. We're
Yes.
getting this clear.
Yep. This is 100% about her character. I think I know a lot of people don't like her because she's whiny, and I can get that. But she's a Sith trying to gain power. That's kind of just how they come off because, if you don't backstab the person next to you, you're not going to make it. It's kill or be killed in those types of situations. So the whininess isn't even so much what bothers me. I mean, sure, it's annoying, but uh, what bothers me more is the fact that her character is still alive and the way that they handled her in the last episode, where she basically, I'm going to paraphrase here, she basically saw the light. And well, I guess it's not paraphrasing. You could say the light of the light side instead of the dark side. Um, I'm kind of jumping around here. Okay. She'd been stabbed once as a kid. She'd been stabbed again as an adult, right in the chest. I don't think she should have been able to survive that.
It's because she had fancy clothing, right? That fancy looking plot armor. It's exactly what it was.
It's not what I thought you meant, but that's hilarious. Um, so that's problem number one. Problem number two was her seeing the light and how she went from I'm going to kill Luke to seeing him and having flashbacks of her childhood and just totally 100% losing who she was. She just tried to kill Owen and Beru to be able to get to Luke, and now all of a sudden they're one big happy family. I just don't buy it. She shouldn't have been alive for that scene in the first place. And then the scene was done so bad. And it's really it's her, right? Because Kenobi, he's a Jedi. He's got to have hope that people can see his way and to be able to, come around, and you don't have to be on the dark side and stuff. And so I get why he was kind of a little more forgiving about how she can go on about her life and whatnot.
He just wants her
But
to do better. Just do better.
just do better. Come on. You can do better. But I don't think she should have been able to do better. I think Luke should have been gone,
Well, I
which
would
I know
even,
would ruin the entire movie franchise, and clearly they couldn't have done that. But she should have been gone before that even happened anyway.
yeah, I was gonna say I would probably, reel it back even further, saying I think that they disgraced Darth Vader in that series by having her stay alive. I do not believe that Vader would leave her there knowing she was still alive. He knew that she was trying to kill him, and I think there's not 1 ounce in his body that would show mercy to let her live.
Well,
So
and after they had just talked about the reason why,
it's like
the,
he knew she lived.
what? No, the Grand Inquisitor, is that the person that was above her that she tried to kill?
Yes,
So he had literally just said it's a wonder what the will to for revenge will do for the will to live. Or I know
something along those lines.
I missaid it, but he literally just said basically the reason why I'm still alive is because I want revenge. Don't you think she's gonna do the same thing? Don't you think she's gonna try to survive unless you like know that she's dead before you walk away? Come on.
Yeah, I really don't. Her character, her character had a place in. Sorry, something in my eye. Her character had a place in Kenobi, but her character shouldn't have been handled the way she was. Um, just because Disney has to have the ability to kill characters. And
They really don't like to.
no, they don't like to. And the thing is, she was a new character. Like, we had the thing hanging over our head about the Grand Inquisitor of are they going to break canon or are they going to, let him live? Which that one made sense that he is supposed to live. We knew that. But as far as Reva, she was new. She very well could have died. I mean, I think the only people that I'm trying to think back just because I can't remember, but I feel like the only people that truly died in this show was just random people. We had the one Jedi killed in the streets, and then we had
There was blanking on her name, but the lady that was helping Leia.
uh, okay, we have one person die that we were following this entire time. Everybody else was random people. Yes, you are correct. The lady that impersonated an Imperial officer and then was taking care of Kenobi and Leia.
That was a sad death.
Yeah,
But besides the point,
yeah. Besides the point, Disney
Reva.
should have been able to kill Reva. I really don't think with what happened with this show, because I think the plan is that she would have her own show after this. I really don't think that's a good idea. I think people are gonna ignore that one just based off of what happened with the character. If her character was more meaningful and it was earned, again, going back to like Holdo, if it was earned of what happened, people would have cared, but it really, really wasn't earned. So, yes, definitely Reva's character would be on this list, I would say. Um, but I think we're going to wrap it up here for this final segment. We talked today about our least favorite Star Wars characters. Not only do we talk about our two least favorites, but we talked about the little survey that we talked about with our friends and family about Star Wars characters and talked about that here on the channel. And then we talked about some honorable mentions, some other Star Wars characters where didn't quite make our least favorite, but they are probably pretty close up there just based off the reasons that we were giving. If you enjoyed these type of podcasts, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. That way you are notified when more of these drop. We like to do these on Wednesdays, and we also like to have some other guests on here from time to time. So we've had a couple already where we've had some other people on here with us, and we do have some planned in the future. So check those out. Drop us a like if you like the video, and drop us a comment letting us know which Star Wars character is your least favorite Star Wars character and why. Let us know. And then, as always, everybody, thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.